Thanks, Nick. I do talk a bit about our structure, so you'll all find out a little bit about that. But yes, I'm Claire, Director of Transformation at Tewkesbury Borough Council. A pleasure to be here. Thanks to Nick for asking us to come and present on this topic, and thanks for so many of you for joining us. There's a good amount of us here, so that's fab. I do think it's nice that there are so many of us that are keen to share and learn from each other. I think local government's so fabulous in so many ways, but actually there are so many frustrations, aren't there? And I think process management and process improvement is probably sitting in the middle of that. Oh, it can be really, really annoying, but there's so much that we can do. And I think you know, the fact we have hundreds of councils across the country doing many of the same things, delivering the same services, but using completely different processes, completely different technology to deliver them. It's not where any of us probably would want us to be. But I do think unless there is a fundamental just obliteration of local government and then rebuilding it, it's probably unlikely to change significantly. White paper on devolution pending. But I think, in the meantime, us sharing and understanding and learning from each other is such a good way to go about bringing forward these improvements. So I'm going to start first, and Amy is going to follow with a bit more of the detail, but I thought a bit of context is probably helpful. I know when I listen to presentations on transformation and things like process management, I'm always keen to know how my council compares to the one that's presenting. So Tewkesbury Borough, it's predominantly rural as a borough. It's right at the top of Gloucestershire. We share a boundary with all of the districts in the county, so places like Cheltenham, Gloucester, Stroud, Forest of Dean. We've got a population of around 94,000 with 45,000 households spread across 160 square miles. So we've got a big patch to cover, but being relatively rural, not too many houses within it. We do have a really, really good strategic location. So we're right at the heart of the M5 corridor, you can see on the map. And because of that, our borough really does include quite a nice mix of businesses. So we've got a wide range of multinationals, lots and lots of micro businesses, and we're also recognised as being an established centre for high quality manufacturing. So our economy is pretty strong. But I think because of our location, we are seeing significant growth. We're one of the fastest growing boroughs outside of London. And with that growth, inevitably, and alongside the financial challenges that we're all very aware of, we are having to become far more innovative and creative with how we deliver our services. And process management, process awareness is all part of that. And hopefully you'll get to see that as we talk through our presentation on our slides. We've had a bit of change leadership-wise in terms of the new administration. We had 16 years of Conservatives, and now we have no overall control, but we are a Lib Dem leader and deputy leader, and we have a new council plan. And that council plan is very much centred around innovation, change, and using data more, which is all good. It's all kind of stemmed from our 4 or 5 years of really trying to push transformation, which is fantastic. Finally, in terms of context, it's probably worth me mentioning, although not entirely relevant, we are changing our name to North Gloucestershire Borough Council in the new year. That is a decision that I think reflects the administration, but also the organisation as a whole, wanting to become more inclusive, wanting to become less focused on a single place within the borough, and just provide a stronger geographical identity. So that's Tewkesbury Borough, and that's the council. In terms of our team, we have got an in-house transformation team, so that sits under me. My actual title is relatively short, it's just Director of Transformation. We've had a team focused on transformation since 2020, and for the organisation, that was the first time we brought together the skills and the experiences that we needed to really drive forward improvement. So we've got project managers, we've got business analysts, front-end designers and developers, and they sit alongside our customer services team, comms and policy. And as a directorate, my focus is really basic. It's quite simple. It's improving our customers' experience with us, streamlining where we can and making efficiencies. The introduction of Dgital and our programs teams was that first step in really committing to the importance of process management. It's something now that's really ingrained and embedded in our culture, but it hasn't been there for that long. So it's hopefully quite reassuring that it's not taken us too long to get it as kind of really central part of our culture. The impact and flexibility that this in-house team gives us is amazing. I mean, we have a very empowered team. They're trusted to make important decisions on service delivery, important recommendations on how things should be done, questioning all the time why things are done in a certain way. Why does that process need to exist? What, just generally getting to the bottom of why we do what we do, and always encouraging trying new technologies, not just relying on these big legacy ones that we've got. We've had good investment in the team. It started small, it's grown. We now oversee other things like GIS, and also corporate project management. But bringing in those additional things has also had a big part to play in terms of our culture shift towards digital by default. It's something that we really do push as a directorate in terms of process design and service design. From a culture, I'm always trying to link it back to culture, knowing that that's what we're focusing on today. The team itself, I think this is really important. The team itself has a strong identity. It places a real and genuine importance on being friendly and welcoming and approachable, constantly being curious about things. And those are actually really important in bringing people along with the change that we're driving. We do a lot around engagement. I mean, working closely with the comms team helps, but we've got our own newsletter around transformation. We do regular briefings on what we're working on and who we're doing, transformation process improvement work with, and why we're doing it. And that plays a really big part in the culture that we're creating. Thanks, James. Before I do pass over to Amy, we do have quite a clear operating model at Tewkesbury for our transformation, and that in itself plays a really big part in supporting and providing the foundations for the culture that we need, and make sure that process management is actually seen as a priority right across the organisation. I'm not going to go into each section in detail, but very happy to share outside of this if anybody's particularly interested. But effectively, our transformation priorities, they're identified through our strategic direction, so through our council plan and through our service plans. From those, we present pull together 6 monthly programmes of deliverables, and those are signed off at chief officer level. But I think very early on we realised that the nature of the team and what we do means that our priorities change quite unexpectedly, and I'm sure people on this call are very used to that. And that's why we work to a shorter term plan, but we do have longer term projects in the pipeline. We're in the process at the minute of developing a new digital strategy, working with the wonderful Dave Briggs on that, and that's going to help us, I think, reflect on how we pull together our priorities and work out what we want to do. But that's what we're doing at the minute. In terms of things like design, each of our transformation projects is project managed by one of our programme officers, and they really own that project, that piece of work. They make sure progress is maintained. They report it to things like our corporate programme board. They just make sure that all elements of our project management is fulfilled, and that includes things such as scoping out the project, looking at the to be and the current, looking at data impact assessments. So there's a huge amount that our project management team does. But I think what's really important to note is that while we as a transformation team have a certain set of skills that's really needed from an improvement perspective, what we absolutely don't have is the knowledge and the expertise of each service area. And so understanding that and getting that as part, to make sure we get the best outcome, getting that services buy-in is so important. The relationship between, my team and the teams that we're working with and the teams whose processes are being improved and designed is absolutely critical. A really important part in getting that embedded as part of our culture has been management team support. I fly the flag at leadership team, but there's a real buy-in and an agreement that if transformation is coming along and supporting a service, then that service provides the time that's needed to really get involved and really get that buy-in, give it the space and the time it needs. In terms of the roles and the tools that we have at Tewkesbury, again, very central to what we do. We have a business analyst, so we only have a single post doing this, but they work with each of our services to document the processes, and that clearly from a process management and improvement perspective is really important. And that is exactly where we identify, what are those processes, pinch points, or where are we double handling our information, or where are we doing things manually? At this stage in our operating model, this is where it's our kind of golden opportunity to promote that process awareness. There have been so many times where it becomes quite clear that officers or teams have just simply never questioned why they're doing things in a certain way. The kind of adage of, oh, you know, it's just the way we do things. It's so understandable because you're so busy just doing things, but it's a really common response. So once that team has started to come across and starts to understand the way in which we look at things, we make it quite clear that our drivers are those things that I mentioned earlier, so customer experience, efficiencies and streamlining processes. We then design a new optimized process working with them, and we understand that services data demand, customer insight, user experience, any information that they've got to then build and launch a new process and a new process that's working for where we want that service to be. We do it in a Moscow, you know, the must-haves, should-haves and could-haves, and it's those that our development team, so our technical team, they use those to then build the product on our low-code platform. We try not to move our priorities. We try not to move our launch dates. We just shave off non-critical elements as and when. That in itself, from a culture perspective, has been quite difficult to embed. I think people are used to a more waterfall approach where you build something to perfection and you launch it. What we're finding is as we launch improved processes that aren't necessarily as perfect as people want, they're actually quite enjoying the fact that we can then build on them using information that we've got in once they're live. So, you know, if somebody's fed back that this bit doesn't work, we can then iteratively build on it. And that we are finding that people are starting to understand that that's quite a beneficial way to work. It's probably worth me mentioning just here before I pass on that we have had Engage pretty much since we started working together as a team. It's absolutely vital to what we do. We use it as that collaboration tool as much as for mapping out. So we get each service to really think about every single step in their process and how it can be improved. And through Engage, you can really see the benefits that you'll get from that to be processed. Delivered. But I'll leave it there because I know Amy's going to talk more about what we use in terms of process mapping. But I am very happy to share more of how we do it outside of this session. But Ames, I'll pass over to you now so you can talk more about the detail.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, so as Claire said, the transformation culture across the organisation is really important, and we've put a lot of time into working with services. Everyone, you know, we are lucky, you know, the majority of services that we're working with are open to change, but we do really listen to their ideas. It's really important that we do that and that we value their input. But also, as Claire said, thinking outside the box as well. We're not necessarily looking at, you know, standard local government processes. Everything is sort of on the table. No idea is a bad idea. So yeah, we really encourage that, and the collaborative working between all services as well. And that sort of can-do attitude is really important. If I just move on, I'm going to show you, these are tiny, I appreciate that, but I just wanted to show it's not really about the detail that's in the process, but just this was a process map we did with our land charges service. So you can see from here that there were lots and lots of steps in the process, and actually it was quite a resource heavy process. It had a lot of duplication in it, a lot of different ways in which searches could be submitted to us. And actually for a really small team that were doing it, it was a big, heavy resource sort of drain and process for them. So we went through it, as you can see, and mapped it all out. And then this is sort of what we came up with. So we looked at all of those opportunities for automation, for taking out where there was the sort of handoffs or where there was the manual processes in there. So it's, like I said, I'm not expecting you to be able to see all of the detail, but it's just showing how much using this Engage software we've been able to map it all out, identify all of that, and create this much shorter process. And we did that with the service. They were really heavily involved in it. So another obviously big point for doing the process mapping and improving our processes is to improve that customer experience. So we have the usual challenges that, you know, they're not unique to us. All of the councils experience this in terms of delays in service delivery, inconsistent experiences, and that lack of proactive communication from our processes. So what we've been able to do is, by streamlining our processes and providing more automation is that we have seen that we have reduced the time it takes for services to resolve issues that customers come with. But also that automated communication wherever we can really reduces that need for officers to input at every single stage, but also means that from a customer point of view, they are fully informed. So, for example, our bulky waste system, we send a text message when the crews are on their way, when it's been picked up. We send text messages with the booking information on when it's a reminder the morning of the collection. So that system automatically does all of those things without that officer input, and then that gives a really nice customer experience for those using the service. And as we've said, empowering staff is really the most important. By mapping out the processes, they are really clear and fully understand what it is. They've got clear ownership of that process, but also of the expectation on them. So they come forward with the suggestions for improvement, they own those, they understand once it's all mapped out what that expectation is and where they've been able to streamline. And that just gives that sort of greater satisfaction in terms of those processes. And then the results that we've seen. So we've seen a reduction in unnecessary customer contact. We have launched a new phone system as well, and that has helped us in being more proactive with the communications that we're putting out. Again, increase income and transform customer experience from these. So it's vital to the work that we're doing to be able to streamline these processes, but then meet all of the customer expectation and the improvements that we've seen from those. So I'm going to hand over to Claire, who's just going to finish up.
Yeah, very final slide. Very aware, Nick, that you said not too many slides. We've probably done too many. But I think just to make the point that, and I'm sure everybody experiences this, but things just don't stay still. And we are now looking at how we can use our operating model that I talked through earlier to support our ambition to become a high-performing organisation. That is an internal change programme that we've got live at the minute. And it's all really about looking at how we can use how we're doing things, but actually start to improve it by listening more to customers' feedback and customer engagement. While we're doing loads of good work, there's still lots of our processes that are still overcomplicated and difficult. And also from a data perspective, we are probably quite behind in terms of our data management and using data properly to inform our improved processes. So that's where our high performing organisation approach will really start to boost our operating model. So I mean, that's it really at Tewkesbury. It's hopefully this has been interesting and helpful, but I would expect, I mean, I'd be interested in terms of the discussion afterwards, that we're in a similar position to lots of people where we're just constantly striving to make our processes better. But what I would say is embedding it strongly in the culture has helped massively.
Claire, Amy, thank you very much. That was excellent. If everyone just keep your cameras off and your microphones muted, because what we will do is we'll go straight to Amanda and Tasha now. But excellent and great number of slides. But also, what's quite interesting, I think, is the fact that you've talked about Engage as a collaborative tool, and the fact that you're getting the service areas together and almost having process management workshops to talk around the as-is and the to-be and that sort of thing. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions following the wonderful Amanda and Tasha from Teignbridge. Now, Tasha, how do you pronounce your surname, please, so I don't butcher it? Are you there? Amanda, you're muted. You're still muted. Oh, you're there now. I thought I was going to have to,
I'm there now. No.
I thought you were going to have to do sign language and I'd have to interpret it. So thankfully that's not the case. Is Natasha with you?
Yes, she is. I don't know.
Excellent. Maybe she can
I can't, but
introduce herself
she's got I don't know. I can't hear. She can't hear. I don't think the microphone's working.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
Well, that'd be. Let's cross that particular technical faux pas bridge when we come to it. Tell everyone who you are and what you've been up to at Teignbridge.
Okay, I'll start. Well, hopefully Tash is able to rectify her technical issues. So my name's Amanda Pujol. I'm Director of Customer Transformation at Teignbridge. So I'm Strategic Director, part of the Senior Leadership Team. I have responsibility for everything customer, including digital and transformation, but the majority of the frontline services, waste, leisure, housing, everything apart from planning, really. So I'm just going to talk you through the approach we've had at Teignbridge to process mapping, but again, a bit like Tewkesbury, I thought it was useful to put it in context about where we are. So as a district, we cover 260 square miles, coastal resorts, market towns, and a third of Dartmoor, so we're quite rural. We have about 64,000 households, and a significant proportion of our residents are 65 plus. So 27% of our residents are over 65, as opposed to sort of the 19% the national average. So that gives us some challenges in terms of accessing services. Quite low wage economy, so we have an average salary of about £28,000 per annum. A lot of our businesses are manufacturing, agriculture, so not many big tech high earning organisations in the district. And we also suffer from some challenges around digital connectivity, so only 42% of premises in Teignbridge have a gigabit internet connection, and even less, have the benefits of super fast broadband. And we are working on that with a Connecting Devon and Somerset scheme, but it does give us some challenges in terms of access to digital services. So that's Teignbridge. So Teignbridge itself has got some financial challenges. It, as with many other councils, is facing a budget deficit in its medium-term financial plan. So for us, it's about 4 million at the moment by 2026-27. And as a result of that, we've responded as an organisation by implementing a new total operating model. So for those of you who are aware of total operating models, that involves looking at all the council and how it operates and how it implements its corporate strategy in practice. So that has included a large-scale restructure of the organisation, but also a significant change in terms of how we look at our people, data and systems. And as part of that operating model, we decided as an organisation that we were going to land on 6 key design principles that we implement across everything that we do in the organisation, and that's them there. So we're striving to be digitally enabled. We want to align our resources and our budget to our priorities. Big focus on person-centred design and designing from the customer back. Efficient and effective delivery, value for money, and investing in staff. And we have 4 work streams that we're currently working on between now and 2027, which are across the organisation. So we have a people work stream, which is working around our people and culture. As I said, we've had to do a large scale reorganisation of services, but we recognise that cultural piece is very important to that. We want to embed a new culture and ways of working in the organisation. So we're doing quite a lot of investment in terms of training and trying to embed action learning sets throughout the authority. We've got a digital work stream, and we have obviously, which is the focus on today, we have a large focus on process, and that's obviously where our process improvement and our process redesign is being managed. We're trying to do an organisational look at processes. So we have a process catalogue that we have developed across the organisation of just over 300 processes that we are starting to look at. And as I said, when we're looking at undertaking that process redesign and looking at the sort of as is to the the 2B, we're expecting the 2B to be able to demonstrate how it aligns to those design principles for the organisation. So,
hello.
Specifically around, oh, Tash, you managed to fix your IT issues. So in terms of how process mapping has sort of developed and created a positive change in the organisation, as I said, it's part of our organisational transformation programme and implementing our new operating model. So as such, it's basically unavoidable, I think, for services in the organisation not to be subject to some degree of sort of process mapping across the organisation at one point over the next couple of years. But we identified sort of 4 key areas, and there's 4 on the other slide, where we really felt that this process mapping approach was really having a positive impact on our culture and our organisation. So if I just talk through the first 4, and actually Tash, who is one of my business analysts, she'll talk about actually real life examples where we've seen this demonstrated through the work we've been doing on process mapping. So the first one is improved communication and engagement across service areas and less silo working. We are really keen as an organisation, as part of the new operating model, to make sure that our managers and our staff work collectively and collaboratively across their organisational and departmental boundaries to solve problems. And we found that process mapping has been a real tool of engaging services in that approach. Building a culture of continuous improvement, as Tewkesbury has said, and as I would echo, we're all trying to continuously improve. We're all trying to do more with less. We all want to improve the customer experience for our customers and residents, and we found that the process mapping has really been key to helping us do that. Improved transparency and governance, we've particularly in terms of building in audit and monitoring and reporting requirements and processes at the outset. So whereas you often put in a new process, or you have a process that involves particularly perhaps government returns or auditing requirements, reviewing those and building them in and making them intrinsic to the process means it's much easier at the end in terms of providing those returns and that audit and governance assurance at the end. And we've also obviously found, and those of you who have been doing process mapping for a number of years will identify this, it means we've also managed to stop doing meaningless and low value activities throughout the council. But also I think for managers, they now recognise what perhaps is a low value and meaningless activity, which perhaps they wouldn't have known previously. So if I hand over to Tash, she'll talk about some of the examples under some of those headings.
Hello. So business analyst for a couple of years now with Teignbridge, but started out originally in customer support. So this opportunity has been really good to bring the customer angle as well as looking at what Amanda just talked about organisationally. And the first point around improving communication and engagement and silo working, one area in particular that this time around with process mapping is we're looking at the sort of shared functions that different services have, and bookings is a prime example. So instead of leisure developing a booking solution and then assets having a different one, and corporately we have a different one over there, we could end up having 3 or 4 different systems in place. And actually, by looking at the requirements across all those services, we can start to build a business case that potentially there is an investment we would want to make in one system, or there's something we can develop in-house as well to support what we currently have. So we've got the opportunity to make some value for money savings there. Another example that comes to mind on that front is the work process mapping workshops and how great they are at getting those different services in the room. And assets and finance we've been working with recently, we had a great example where assets was completing a task in a system thinking that they were doing it because finance required it, and finance were also inputting some information into the same system thinking they were doing it because assets needed it. So then it was that question about, so why have we been doing this? It kind of goes into the stop doing activities, but that would never have come to light if they weren't in the same room on that topic to begin with. I think the one around continuous improvement is that luckily now we're into our next phase of going back and reviewing where we've got to, like I think Claire mentioned earlier, not letting perfect stop you from launching, but recognizing getting to a point where it's better than it was and it's good enough for now, but going back to make sure that we're taking advantage of new system developments that are coming to light that we can now implement to take it to the next level, and one of those being around our mist bins. We've now got a street cleansing system coming in that's going to help us to deal with the escalation work. So that's going to improve the customer experience, because where they couldn't track the progress before and keep track of what's happening, they will be able to going forward. But also that thing of you don't have to wait. If there's an efficient, simple, not expensive, quick win that services identify, they can put in a request to make that change right away. As it comes up, so that's been positive, empowering staff to be taking control and accountability of improvements in their own areas. And then the governance and the transparency on performance as well has been a really key one. We're looking at that currently with our own change management framework. So we're making sure we're factoring in how it's going to affect property, how it's going to affect finance, spatial planning. Does it align with this corporate strategy? But also in the process design, an example that comes to mind is where we've been working with planning. And whilst we're trying to hit those government KPIs, we can, in our design of the to-be, we can set our own service local performance indicators to help encourage and motivate staff to reach those, with the end goal being that we'll meet those KPIs as well. So it helps with that performance monitoring and getting the best out of staff.
And did you want to talk about the meaningless activity and the leisure one?
Oh yes, the other thing is, this is it. This is being careful about what offerings we've been putting out there, with promotions and policies, so price for life or free months off free. Actually, that's not something we can probably afford to keep doing, as there's financial pressures on the organisation. So let's use the data to make more strategic decisions on what policy promotions we're going to offer going forward. And so we've made a decision to stop doing some of the ones that are costly to us as an organisation. And the other example there that I've put in is about the planning team were carrying on with something introduced during COVID as a workaround, where they were having a morning meeting, which wasn't actually a meeting anymore. It was before COVID, but when everyone went to work from home, actually it became a task of just compiling a document of information that could be automated. And now that's been implemented, those sort of senior admin staff have been upskilled to be able to deal with some fast-track planning applications, and they're getting a more rewarding experience in their roles as a result.
Thanks. I'll just move on to the next slide. So the other sort of positive culture changes we've seen organisationally, I think, whilst we have had a real focus on our external customer facing processes, we have by necessity, and I think Claire mentioned this about sometimes you get diverted onto things that potentially is not in the plan. We have had times where we've had to divert the process mapping team into more of our internal services, where we've had particular blockages or where issues have been identified about performance. And I think one of the key things about that, because we have a whole sort of process mapping framework that we share with our managers and certain expectations around what services need to do, is that we embed that customer view both from the time we're doing the as is into the time we implement it as the to be, because that customer feedback looks really important. And I think potentially we've identified that particularly within internal customers, so we're talking about some of the classic back office services, legal, finance, HR, they often don't necessarily think about other internal services as being their customers. So going back to the design principles and effectively designing from a person-centered approach, as part of that process re-engineering process, they do have to speak to their internal customers about what they think about their processes, both during the as is, but also, you know, testing out the to be and will it actually meet their needs. We have used process mapping now as a tool to expose issues in underperforming services, because what we've found is that actually when you get process mapping into a service, you find out a lot more than just that sometimes the process isn't what's working very effectively. So we have I guess parachuted the process mapping team into some of our higher risk services where we've identified that there's performance issues and we've got concerns, and used it as part of that overall sort of service improvement plan. And that's been, it's been a real tool in terms of flushing out some of the other issues that services might be having, not just about process, but perhaps about how they monitor performance and what digital systems they're using, how they engage with other parts of the organisation. So we have actually used it, as I said, as a tool to expose issues in some of our areas that needed some attention. We also have found that in terms of especially looking at the to-be processes for departments and services, we want to be quite aspirational. So it's almost like let's look at the art of the possible. It may not be able to be achieved in the first instance, or we may not have the functionality in the first instance, but actually this is what we want to achieve, and working back from that rather than actually, you know, this is what we can do now because these are the systems and these are the, you know, the functionality we've got. And that ties into that last point about challenging digital suppliers, because we had, you know, when we're going back to our digital system suppliers, actually saying that, you know, we do need it to do this, and this is why we need it to do this, and having that sort of constructive conversation around how they can improve their offer to customers to enable us to meet our objective has also been a very positive change for us. So Tash, did you want to come up with some real life examples you've experienced under those headings?
Yeah, so the internal, first one you talked about, our internal customers, some of the work that came out of process mapping with assets is we're sharing these completion notices with legal, with finance, with business rates, and with different other areas. And as part of that review of actually asking those services, you're receiving this, do you need all of this information? What do you need, and what are you doing with it afterwards? Quite a lot came to light that actually some of them were just filing it, others had a much more vested interest in it, and they had their own requirements that would benefit their use of time as well. So we're now looking at a more intelligent digital solution for how they're circulated and making sure that only the right information is going to the right people and at the right time. So that's been a positive. And I think it's that feedback as well, that as part of that process, the service is saying, actually, whilst I'm here and we're talking about this one, there's another thing that we've been doing with assets that actually we've been thinking for a while would be better if we were included earlier on. And so that it sort of starts off different conversations and tasks being picked up elsewhere that maybe weren't in the original scope of what we were dealing with, but the services are empowered to take those forward. The tools for exposed, underperforming. So it always feels counterintuitive when the service is struggling to be told to stop what you're doing and come and sit in a room and process map. And when they're in their fight mode, that could actually feel like the last thing they should be doing. But actually having that step away and that time to look at it from an further away from it and have that oversight of actually what's happening here has actually helped planning to realise that they were never going to get the view of the casework with the system that they had. And therefore they weren't able to see where their case officers were sort of really struggling and falling under the pressure of it all. Staff retention was becoming an issue. Having that, stepping away and having that oversight to see actually some of our more skilled officers are doing have less casework than our newer officers, and realising we need to distribute that work in a different way and have overview of it that's visible at all levels. So that transparency at manager level, but also at officer level, helped the case officers to feel motivated to keep working, to measure their own performance against their peers, and to ask for development, personal development support where they needed it. We implemented that with planning, and it's been so successful. We also widened it across the organisation for the corporate complaints policy, and in both those areas, performance has now improved just for having that visibility. I quite like talking about the future-proofing side of it, because we did some work with planning in the first transformation programme, and they had a process map called the Ultimate to Be, which I picked up with them last year. And as we were looking at their Ultimate to Be process map, we realised it was pretty much that current as is. And so what felt impossible, possibly in 2019 to deliver, has incrementally been achieved between now and then. And it's motivating and inspiring us to be looking for the Ultimate to Be for our maps now as well. So that's a real positive and encouraging thing to see, that to sort of measure the success of how far you've come. And we've got them trialling different digital solutions. Spatial planning has been using some AI to do some analysis for the consultations they've done for the council strategy and stuff. So by trialling systems and digital solutions along the way, that their contributions to the To Be workshops are really helpful as well, because they've had a taste of what is possible, and they're ready to bring that in. And then lastly, challenging the digital suppliers. We went in with Leisure at one point, who had repeatedly been told over a year or maybe longer that it just wouldn't be possible to put the junior memberships online from a GDPR perspective, and it just sounded wrong. And by looking at what our neighbouring authorities were doing, who always also use the same system provider, we were able to go back and challenge that evidence base, and within a month we had that process up and running online for customers, which was a great relief of the service and a much better experience for their customers. And again, with planning, I'm sure everyone here would probably understand that it's great that the case officers have got this app on there that they can use out on site, but it doesn't automatically load their case notes. They have to go and type them up manually when they get back to the office. And that, in this day and age, that just seems mad. So whilst the current system spec says this, no, computer says no, we were like, well, we're not going to settle for that. We logged an idea on the system providers portal a few months ago, and we checked in on it last week, and actually it's been picked up. It's scheduled for development. It gained a lot of votes and a lot of traction from other organisations, and so now we're again enthused by that we should go and ask for it, because if we don't ask, we don't get.
So just to kind of sum up, and I think it's useful to probably just summarise some of what I think are maybe the success factors that we've had about, I guess, embedding that sort of process mapping approach as a tool for sort of culture and organisational change. I think, and obviously these are my thoughts, because it's a key component of the organisational transformation programme. We've got buy-in at MD and SLT level, and I think, because we have this transformation program that's underpinned by a set of design principles that have been designed and developed with service managers in the organisation, which we've all signed up to, it does give you a platform to enable you to have that engagement, and because we've all signed up to it and collectively own it. I think communication is really important. I think you need some managers really get this, and they become organizational evangelists in terms of really, wanting more from unfortunately what is a limited resource in terms of the process improvement team. But I think using those in the organisation, and then also celebrating the successes and the improvements that we've made and the feedback from customers is really important. We have on a more, I guess, on a micro level, built business processing and procedures into some of our organisational processes and procedures. So if, because I'm lead for digital transformation, if somebody wants a digital project or wants a new system or as part of that kind of business needs requirements, part of that process, you need to do some process mapping. So you can't move your project on until we've looked at that. And again, it's about that kind of what's in it for me. So I've had managers come to me and they've said, you know, I'm really struggling with demand, I'm really struggling with resources, I need more staff. And I've said, well, can we just look at the demand information, the data, and do a bit of process mapping to understand that the processes are right before we go down the road of actually trying to see if we do need more staff, particularly when you're in a financially confined sort of council. That has got their buy-in, and at the end of the day, sometimes they do need more staff, and they've managed to achieve that. I think resourcing is key. I am very lucky that we're a small district council, and I've got business analysts, I've got process improvement officers, I've got project managers, I've got project manager, I've got data analyst, and I know that is not common in district councils. And I guess this issue about, you know, when you especially talking about the services who are really struggling, and that piece around trying to get them on board, and they can't possibly come out of what they're doing to do a week of process mapping so we can understand what's going on. Well, actually, it can't get any worse on some occasions. If you've already got a poor service, you know, taking them out for a week isn't necessarily going to impact any more significantly. So and the quick wins sometimes, as I said, outweigh the